Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, let's welcome Danielle to the show. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me today, Kyra.
Awesome. I'm excited to chat with you. So, what we'll do is we'll just kick this conversation off by having you tell the audience listening or watching who you are and what you do.
Oh, I love telling this story because nobody would guess the beginning of it. I actually started my college career as a music major. I thought I was going to sing opera for a living, and forgive me, my voice is a little scratchy today, but I promise it normally sounds better. But I had an English professor that made us write all about the future of our career and where we thought we would go. And I realized very quickly I was going to be broke because I don't have friends in high places. So I did have friends in the business school that were doing accounting, and I decided to give it a shot. And there's this weird correlation between music and numbers and accounting, and it just meshed, and I loved it. I loved everything about it, and got my master's, did my time in public accounting like most people do when they leave with an accounting degree. And then I went from there to starting a family and realizing I didn't want to work 60-hour weeks with a newborn at home because that doesn't work.
Right.
And then from there, I'm in the Houston area. So a lot of my experience up until then was with oil and gas companies. So I left public for an oil and gas company in Houston, stayed with them for a little over a decade, but they went through bankruptcy when oil prices tanked. And ironically, a few years after that, the pandemic hit, and it was very clear they were selling things for pennies on the dollars. The company was going to close. And I never want to take away from anything that people went through during the pandemic because there was a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. But there was also this silver lining where we all just stopped and slowed down. And I'll be honest, I miss it.
Yeah,
and for me, it was this other perspective of parenting. I'm a workaholic. I love what I do. I do it a lot. It's easy when you love what you do to throw yourself into it. Not that I don't love my kids, but it's a different scenario. But during that pandemic, I was like, get them to school or figure out how on earth to teach them their school stuff. Get to know the teachers and the friends and the coaches and all of the other parents. And this whole other world opened up. And I realized I didn't want to let that go, but there had to be a way to keep doing what I love doing and being there for the people that I love the most. So that is what led me to start Corners CFO.
All right. I love it. All right. That is fantastic. And yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that. I was just having that conversation with somebody today where we were just talking about, said, again, the loss of life during the pandemic. I mean, my heart will always go out to anyone who has lost someone who experienced their own trauma during the time, but the rest and the ability to step back, I was like, oh man, I actually miss not having to be places. And it's like, I knew what every day was going to look like. I knew what the weekends were going to look like. We were going to be home and we were going to be together and we were going to be doing stuff at home. And so I think there's still something about that time. I know there were a lot of people who were just, they couldn't take it. They were trying to get back. They had to eat. They were back in the streets. But I tend to think, to be quite honest, that there are probably about more people than we really even imagine who still are living that quiet life, because I think a lot of people just changed during that time. A lot changed for people. I'm not out nearly as much as we used to go out. And even now we try to do a date night on Friday, but a lot of times we're just perfectly fine with being home.
Yeah. And just resting.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, you don't have to tell me. I always tell my husband, on Fridays, if he comes in and if I'm finishing up work, but I'm not dressed, and he comes in, he's like, so, I mean, did you want to do something? And I was like, I don't know. Do you want to do something? Anytime I hit him with I don't know. Do you want to do something? That means I'm perfectly fine. He's like, well, I mean, I don't know how to. I said, oh, it's cool. I'm perfectly fine with staying in. We'll just order some food.
Yeah, I was like, date night at home, order the food.
Yes, and watch something on TV. It all just is so it's all so easy. And I chuckle because it's just so easy to fall into that. And it's comforting. I don't ever feel like I just have to be out, doing something. So.
Yes. Well, and then I feel like externally, the world around us has been nothing but a roller coaster since. So
For
for those
sure.
listening that feel like you're on the roller coaster, I'm with you there too.
Yeah. And it's okay to get off of it. It's okay to stand on the side and watch it go up and down.
Yeah.
So apologies everyone for digressing. I love to be taken back to that moment because I think it was a horrible time, but it was also a special time because it was a time of connection and reflection. I hope that a lot
Yes.
of people, I know for me personally, I learned a lot about just what I wanted. Like you mentioned, a lot about what you wanted in life and how you want it to, because by that time you didn't know, like you weren't promised the next day. You weren't promised,
No.
you didn't know how it was going to play out. And so you made a decision for yourself and your family for what was going to be the best, like just thinking like, we come out on the other side of this, I'm going to do this different.
Well, and let's be fair, there's a certain amount of faith that has to go into that when you take those leaps of
For
faith.
sure.
But
Yeah.
it takes events like that sometimes to open your eyes and be like, oh, there's this other thing. Like
Yeah.
maybe I'm supposed to go a different way.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. All right. So let's dive on into more about the business and what you do and how you help people. Because you say you do big business financial strategies for small business owners. And so we have a lot of those who listen to the show, people who are trying to get their businesses off the ground, trying to figure out, what they need to do. And something that I read in when I was learning more about you is you say businesses need to be bankable.
Yes.
So tell us, let's start there.
So I'm going to bring up a financial report that most business owners don't look at. And bankable doesn't really mean I'm making a bunch of money on my P&L or my income statement, whichever word makes sense to you. Bankable actually refers more to your balance sheet than it does to your P&L. It's how has your business done over time and what is reflecting there. The reason I like to say business owners should be bankable is because the number one thing I recommend to any business owner I talk to, outside of paying yourself, that's the absolute number one. You got to pay yourself. But second to paying yourself is you need to have a line of credit. And a line of credit is something that is much easier to get when you don't need it and when you're bankable than when you are struggling and you need that safety net or you need that cash flow. It's going to be really hard to get a bank to give it to you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that all made sense. P&L, income statement, balance sheet. Those didn't make sense to me. So yeah, I think that's like a loaded thing because a lot of people, like you mentioned, being able to get the credit line when you need it, most people can't, like you mentioned, because it's like, again, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And we're here today. Danielle's telling you what you need to know. So let's talk about how business owners, how can they create that safety net for cash flow?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by saying there are a lot of business owners that are probably listening to this, and I am one of you, I promise, that are risk averse, debt averse. We've got this overwhelming, I don't want to say, I'm trying to pick the right, we've got an overwhelming sense in the personal finance industry of you need to pay off your debts, you should be debt free, no credit card debt, don't get into anything you can't pay for, which is wonderful personally.
Right.
The reality of business, and I hate saying this because it feels icky, but it takes money to make money.
Yeah. Yeah. It does.
And
Safe.
it just does. And to create that safety net when you're just starting out is going to feel impossible. So I want to take a minute and say, for those of you where the safety net has been your credit card and you've racked up credit card debt, it's normal. For those of you that have had to dip into savings or you don't have money to pay taxes right now because you've used all the cash, it's normal. And there is a way out of it. The reason I'm always pushing for those line of credits is because with a line of credit, you can draw when you need it and put it back when you don't. Like when the cash comes back in, you put the money back in.
Mhm.
Because when you are in a position where you're scrambling for cash and you need to pay the bills, yourself included, I hope, you're going to take anything that life throws at you. You're going to say yes to every dollar, and that's not good for you or your business. It's not a good headspace. But if you are able to create that safety net, whether it's a line of credit or a credit card that's available to you, or building up your own savings so that you've got one, it's going to give you space to think through the times where things get hard. Because it's not an if, it's a when. There are always going to be times that get rough. And you're going to be like, okay, what are we doing now? Businesses need to be agile. We've got to be able to pivot. But inevitably, there's going to be a moment where you're like, that's not the number I wanted to see in the bank account today. And you want to have somewhere you can turn.
Right. Yeah. So, Danielle, what's the difference between using debt and drowning in it?
So, back to those of you that have been using your credit card, this is one of my favorite examples to give. I know for me personally, and for so many of the business owners I work with, maxing out a credit card feels suffocating. You are constantly thinking about that balance and needing to pay down that balance. You're thinking about the total. You're not thinking about the monthly payments. We all know that like disappears into interest and whatever.
Right, yeah.
Everybody's thinking about the $10, $15, $20,000 that's sitting on there. And that seems insurmountable and it's suffocating. Versus if you have a term loan or a line of credit where you're making regular monthly payments, like your car note. Think of a car note. Your car note is probably far more than $10, $15, $20,000 in total for that vehicle. But you know it's a 5, 7, good Lord, they're getting higher and higher, and it might be $1,000 payment every month, and it'll be good. You can make the $1,000. When it's done, and all's well. It doesn't carry the same burden mentally and financially for you to have a term loan or somewhere you can access, whether it's savings or a line of credit, as it does to have that burden of like a high credit card that's maxed out. The other thing I'm going to add is kind of this difference between good debt and bad debt, because there really are both. And I hate the term bad debt, but the bad debt is the stuff that feels suffocating. And the difference between the two is really as simple as intention. When you are intentional about how you're spending that money that you just took out, and you know that you're going to see a return on it, then it's easy to pay back and it doesn't carry the same level of burden, and it can actually help you grow your company. One of the best examples of intentional debt, and so many business owners need this as they grow, is hiring somebody. It takes time for somebody you hire to make you money. But at the end of it, they're going to make you money. As long as you're bringing in the business, they're going to churn out the work and it's going to work out.
Right. So what about people who are listening out there and they're saying, I want to invest, and I know that you feel a certain way about not getting permission. So for people who have a CPA, how do you feel about people who want to invest? And do you say, no, you need to come ask me. I'm Danielle. I'm the
No. So whether it's investing or buying something or taking that next step in your business, I have learned over the years, we all have, whether you want to call it faith or gut instinct or spirit led, or there, you feel it. And you know when you know you need to do something. And if you know you need to do something, the last thing you need to do is come ask me, your bookkeeper, or your CPA if it's okay. So I tell my clients, if you've got that, this is what we need, this is the next step, then the answer is always going to be yes. Let's go figure out how. Let's figure out what we need to sacrifice to get there. Let's figure out the game plan to make sure that it's working the way you want it to. Let's go figure out how, and not just do this blindly, but take an educated leap.
Gotcha. I mean, I think that's fair, right? I mean, because I love that you approach it that way, because let's be honest, if somebody wants to do something, they're going to do it, right?
Right? But you would be amazed how many people I've had that tell me they didn't even know their bank account balances without asking their CPA.
Okay. I think that's also fair. I think, you can see it from both sides. Those are people who are, those people are like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's escaping my brain. Oh my God. Like it was there and it left again. Okay. We're going to keep talking if it comes back, because gosh, it was there and it just went away. But I could see that. I could see me being one of those people that would be asking.
Well, because it's so easy with numbers. And I'm going to say this so that everybody hopefully goes, if all you do is listen to this and go peek at your numbers and you know your bank account balance and you've opened like QuickBooks to see what it looks like, I am so proud of you if that's all you get out of this. Because for the same reason people ask their CPA about bank, they just want to put their head in the sand and pretend it's all good. It's easier.
And it's not, I mean, that happens with like literally everything with money, right? You think about people in their 401k, like their investments. stocks. I mean, it's just like, no, you can't just set it and leave it. You have to do something. You have to do something
Like
to,
check in a little bit. Go
yeah.
go go kick the tires. Just make sure things are moving.
Exactly. All right. So now when we're talking about our businesses and trying to make sure we have healthy financial businesses, what are some of the specific tasks? Now, I know you just mentioned just opening up QuickBooks and just knowing what the numbers look like. What are some things that people should be doing regularly just to make sure that they have healthy business?
If you are just starting out, I will say the very first thing you should do is find a good bookkeeper and check in with your bookkeeper. No business owner needs to learn QuickBooks unless QuickBooks is your business. There are phenomenal bookkeepers out there at all kinds of price points that can help you get your business organized, and they can guide you until you're ready for more help. They're there to help you understand what the numbers look like, what the financial statements are, and what they mean. And then once you do that, what you should be doing at least once a month is checking in on your bank account and your P&L. So P&L is profit and loss, income statement. It's got a couple of different words, but it's where you see your revenue, your expenses, and your net income. A lot of business owners check their CRM and they know their sales, but they don't necessarily check on their bookkeeping and know their true net income or their real profit.
What's one thing that people should, what's one question people should ask if they are saying, I hear you, Danielle, I'm going to go out, I'm going to try to find a CPA. What's the one question that you think everyone should ask a potential accountant?
Do they have experience in your industry? Accounting is accounting and it applies pretty evenly across a lot of things. But if you have a different type of industry, you're going to want to make sure, specifically for any attorneys or professional services that have regulations they have to follow, you want to make sure the bookkeeper knows how to handle that. Or if you are simply selling on Etsy or Shopify, you need a bookkeeper that knows how to handle those integrations and the e-commerce side of things. You need someone that's familiar with your industry. And I would say the second question to that is how frequently and quickly are you going to finish my books? Do not want a bookkeeper that is only giving you books in time for taxes once a year. And I'll be honest, I don't know a bookkeeper that likes doing that. They want to be able to give it to you monthly, and you need to be getting it monthly.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you for 2 questions. So earlier you talked about the potential of hiring a new team member. And of course, because every time we always want to hire somebody. I mean, I don't know if that makes a business owner feel like I've made it because they hire an additional person, but
That's such a headache though.
what financial information do you need to help predict the impact of hiring a new team member?
You have to build a runway, and you need to know that during that runway, you can make this team member profitable. So we do what I call a benchmark sort of break-even analysis, where we'll talk with clients and we'll say, how many hours do you think this person's going to do? Because you do not have to hire your first person full-time. In fact, I would argue you should not hire your first person full-time because you don't know what you're going to be able to give them yet.
Right.
So, and let me back up. That should probably be number one. You know what you need them to do. But then we need to know how much we want to pay them and how many hours we think they're going to do and how much money they're going to make you in those hours. And then if there is a ramp up to that, as there inevitably will, so that you can train them, you need to know how long it's going to take. And that's what I mean by runway. So let's say you want to hire somebody for $50 an hour, 20 hours. I'll just say 20 hours a month to make it really easy. So we're talking $1,000 a month for this person. This person is going to need trained before they make you money. So how many hours are you going to need to spend training them so that they know how to do what it is you need them to do? And then once they do, are they going to be able to hit 20 hours? Do you have a pipeline of work that will keep them busy for 20 hours? And how much money are they going to make you in those 20 hours? Because if you're hiring somebody for 20 hours, it's never going to be straight, as I like to call, billable work. It's not all revenue generating work.
Right.
There is always admin time in there.
For sure. Those are some good tips because I think a lot of times, and I like that you also stress you don't have to hire them full time.
No, or even W-2.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important because I think a lot of times people just want to go straight to the full-time employee they're going to have this salary, but you never really think about those things as far as you mentioned the admin time, the training time, and then separating that from when are they making me money time.
I'll be honest, we are a little over 4 years in business now. I just hired my first full-time person at the end of last year.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. But we have a team of 6, and some do 5 hours a week, some do 10 hours a week, some do 20 hours a week. And it's whatever fits them. And it also lets me be a really flexible boss. I hate using that word, but they get to work when they want to work, and they get to be with their families the way they want to be as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about, we were talking about profit, a little bit, profit levers. All right. So what if people are listening and they're like, I have cut everything I can cut. What are some of the profit levers they can pull to increase the profit margin?
My favorite profit lever, especially, and this sounds a little bad because right now everybody's doing it, but you need to be doing it too. And women are notorious for not valuing what we are worth and not charging what we are worth. So you need to go raise your prices. Done. Period. Even if you're sitting there and telling yourself that if I raise my prices, people will leave or I won't get this next client. I want you to sit and do the math, and I do this with some of our clients. Just losing one client at the old rate might actually replace itself by raising everybody else's, and you're doing less work for the same amount of money.
Yes.
So raise your rates. I don't care who you are, what you do, how you do it, charge more.
Yes. Yes. Because you're right. I mean, you're so right. We always devalue the work, although we're going to go above and beyond.
Yep.
And a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I'll just pull the price down so that I can get the client. And it's like,
then you're going to do twice as much work.
Exactly. It's like, well, they're going to pay somebody. I mean, and I tend to believe that the right people, you're going to attract the right people, whether like they're not going to see the price. They're going to just see the value in the work that you're able to provide to them.
Yep.
And just think about it. And no offense to any of my male listeners, but men aren't going to say that, oh yeah, you can pay me $50 when I really charge $80.
Yep. Well, and I'll be honest, most of my male clients, I will still tell them this. We'll have the conversation of, and I actually did this week with someone, when is the last time you negotiated prices or raised your rates? And it's a very easy thing for them. It's, oh yeah, I need to go talk to X, Y, and Z, and we could probably go up by this. Versus women, we just like battle it in our heads so much more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's number 1.
Yes, I like it. Oh, that's good.
Number 2, again, don't care who you are, what you do, or how you do it. You do more than one thing. You have more than one product or service in your business. And because of that, you need to know your profit by product or service. So many business owners, and this is where I would work with your bookkeeper, hoping you all have one, to make sure that when you look at your P&L, your profit and loss, you don't just see one sales line. You should see each of your offers or your services or your products grouped together in those services so you know what's selling where. And just as you see the revenue that way, you should see, in accounting terms, it's called cost of goods sold. But I like to call it revenue generating costs because service-based businesses think they have no cost of goods sold. But your cost of generating revenue is time, and time is money. And there is a cost of goods sold to every offer you do. So you want to know what that profit is. So your revenue minus your costs for each of those products or services and how they're doing on your income statement so that you can sell more of your most profitable product or service. And that will naturally, even if you sold 100 items either way, if you sold 100 of the more profitable, you're going to make more money at the end of the day.
Oh, that's good. It's good nuggets today, Danielle. All right, so let's talk about, I am so intrigued, the big business framework that can help small business owners generate and maintain operational profit. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, this can get a little long, so I'm going to try and tell it very quickly. I use a 6-part framework. We call it our Reveal Your Path to Profit framework. And we've got fancy acronyms and letters for each of it. But basically, the first part is making sure you know your balance sheet and that whoever's helping you with your bookkeeping is reconciling that balance sheet. Because in accounting terms, If your balance sheet isn't reconciled, we can't trust what the rest of the numbers say. We don't know that they're finished or that they're complete. So making sure that that's all in place, and also really understanding how you feel about debt and the sustainability of your business, and the balance sheet as a whole being that foundation for your business. The second part is all about your revenue. So just like we talked about, are we raising rates? When's the last time we raised rates? What are your profit margins? Do you know your different revenue streams? Are there places we can tweak within that revenue section so that you're instantly making more money without having to do anything extra? So we'd go all through that in the second part. In the third part, we go through everything underneath that. So all of those operating expenses, we go through those and we put them in one of three buckets. You have what I like to call your required costs. I don't know a business owner today that runs without cell phone and internet.
Right.
I couldn't do it. I don't know anybody else. Then you have what I like to call the personal perks. So as you grow in your business, there are tax benefits that you get to start taking that don't necessarily add value to the business. One of my favorite, and I hope the IRS never comes knocking for this, but my kids are on my payroll and they have defined positions. They do things for the business. They don't add a lot of value to the business, but it's a defensible tax deduction that I can take. So it's a personal perk.
Okay.
The third one is investment, because if you are not required to pay it or getting a personal perk out of it, it is an investment in your business. And every investment should be returning time, money, or both. And if it's not, then we make sure we check if it's marketing, because that can take a little bit of time to kick in. But if it's not marketing and it's not returning on the investment, it's not a good investment for your business. And if we still feel like we need to cut costs further, we will circle back to those required costs. Because at the end of the day, the cost is not what's required. The result you get from that cost is what's required. And sometimes we can get creative and think outside of the box and get to the result in a more cost-effective way. So all of that's part 3. Part 4 is where we build the budget. So me and my team, or through our course, we take what we learned in revenue, we take what we learned in expense, and we build a budget out line by line, month by month for the rest of the year. We do things a little bit differently. We do what I like to call bottom-up budgeting. So if you've been in a corporation before, you're probably very familiar with top-down budgeting, where it's like, the department gets this much, what do you want to do with it?
Yes.
We go bottom up because we've already identified what a good investment is. We already know what the requirements are. We budget cell phone, $200 a month. It's in the budget every time. So that when we get to month 5 or part 5, which is all about comparing your budget to your actuals, we know exactly what's different. We can literally pull up the books, pull up the budget, and go, that stands out. Really easy. So when you do it that way, your budget to actuals becomes your secret sauce. It is where the magic happens.
Okay.
A budget is not meant to be met. You're not meant to meet the budget, which sounds totally backwards to anybody that's been in corporate. But the point of a budget is to understand why you didn't meet it. If you had record revenue, we want to know how to do it again. If you spent more money and it made more money, great, let's do that again. So last but not least, the 6th part is your cash flow. And a lot of clients come to us and that is their first concern, is cash flow. But any financial person that tells you they can give you cash flow without understanding your business and building a budget is just going off of the current numbers. So we take your budget and we layer in the cash components so that you can understand cash and timing of cash throughout the rest of the year.
Awesome. That is, I mean, you did a great job of explaining it. So it was understandable, simple, but I love the detail in it, right? Because we're taking somebody every step of the way. And I think it makes it attainable to the business owner, because a lot of times, like you said, a lot of times we don't want to know that part. We know we feel like we need to know, but we don't want to know, because when you are forced to know the numbers, then you're forced to know like if something's wrong.
Yep.
And this approach where you're working like with you and your team as a partner, it's helping you to build the framework.
Yeah. And it takes off that edge of it being wrong, because it's never that something's wrong. If it's out of budget, it's just a story your numbers are telling.
Yeah, true. I like that. Yes, Danielle. Danielle dropping the knowledge for us. Well, Danielle, let me just say thank you for coming and for sharing a topic that sometimes can seem daunting to small business owners or people just starting out. So thank you so much for all the good advice. Like I have learned a lot. Even though I know a lot of this stuff through corporate, but I think through the eyes of someone who owns a small business, it's very different because yeah, I've seen the P&L and all the sheets and all that stuff, but yes, I've seen it from somebody else's money, their money.
Yep.
That is way more money than I have in my
It's
business
harder to
has.
look at when it's yours.
Yeah, and so so this has been fantastic. Now, if people want to connect to you, how can they do that?
We have a landing page set up just for you guys, and we're actually going to have a form you can fill out to get our expense review freebie. So it'll walk you through those 3 parts I talked about. I feel like that's where most people want, where can I go cut costs? So it'll walk you guys through that. And it's going to be on our website. So the number 4, cornerscfo.com/glowupgirl.
Or just for you all, just for you all. So take advantage. We'll also drop the links in the link in the show note as well. All right, Danielle. So we're in transition. We're going to go to 3 things with Danielle. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. One's a 2-parter. It just helps our audience get to know you a little bit better. So the first question is a 2-parter. As I mentioned, how do you start and end the day?
Oh my gosh. I literally was just writing a caption for social on this because I know how I should start and end my day. And I try to start and end them that way, but we are not exactly consistent yet. I will say the goal to start and end the day is I usually try to start with quiet time, whether it's I am a woman of faith, so whether it's Bible study or meditation or just listening to music and letting my brain process and wake up. The second to that is doing some like stretching and getting my body moving. I am really bad about the end of the day part of it because I'm usually rushing around with kids, getting them to bed, making sure homework's done. I honestly usually end my day listening to an audiobook and laying in bed.
Okay, that's nice. It's like relaxing.
Unless you're at the part of the book where you're like, what happens next? And then I'm like, no, I got to go to sleep.
I know. Yeah, well, I know that all too well. And especially when you tell yourself, like, tonight I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go to bed. That is the repeated dialogue I have with myself every night. It's like I tell myself I usually try to go upstairs around like 10:30. And then I always tell myself, okay, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm not going to do anything. So I like to do crafts. So I'm working on a puzzle now. And so if I just go straight by it, then I get upstairs. But then I stop sometimes, and then I'll say, look at my watch, and I'll go, I'm just gonna do it for 30 minutes. Then next thing you know, it's an hour, yeah. And then I will go upstairs, and the whole time I'm going upstairs, I'm like, because I'm gonna make a couple steps. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm gonna have a conversation with God. I'm gonna talk. We're gonna do our thing. Then I'm gonna pray and get ready for bed. Then I'm gonna tell myself that I'm not gonna open up TikTok. I'm not gonna open up. And I've told myself that for the last 2 nights, and I have been falling out of the bed laughing and sending my husband and sending them to my husband. And he's always like, I mean, I'm downstairs. Like, why do you keep he's like,
Mine does it. He's like, I'm on the couch and you're supposed to be going to sleep.
yes. And he's like, and you just he's like, you're on a roll tonight, huh? And so then it's like, we'll do this thing. I'll go up, and it's like my time to kind of have quiet time and like watch what I want. And then he like gets to watch like YouTube videos or whatever. And so then by the time he comes up, and then he's like, I thought you were going to be asleep. And I was like, well, I thought I was too. But then he was like, yeah, you were on TikTok. And I was like, I couldn't put it down because it was funny. They kept being more funny. And he's just like, wow. All right. The second question is, what's a goal or intention you set for yourself this year?
I'm a big fan of to pick a word for the year. And my word for this year is homeostasis, which for me means a little bit more than balance. It means I'm helping the people around me support that balance, not just trying to find that balance.
Nice. I like that. All right. And the last question is, where are you currently finding inspiration?
I mean, I do scroll some TikTok, but I will say I tend to spend, if it's not in that quiet time in the morning, it's usually listening to a podcast or Reading a really good book. I love finding good self-help books. That sound really geeky, but I like it.
That's all good. Yeah, yeah. Books are fantastic. Definitely. I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, oh, and I like paper books. Like I like the smell of books. I like the paper in between my fingers and folding back the edges on the book. So yeah. Yeah, I saw that face. Yeah. All right. Well, Danielle, before I let you go, I'm gonna ask you one last thing. Can you tell can you tell us 3 things you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
Absolutely. So I kind of mentioned them earlier. The number one, if you are not paying yourself, if you're still starting out, if you are not paying yourself, back to my book love, I recommend a book called Profit First. And I recommend learning to put your profit first. You have to pay yourself. You're going to burn out, and then you can't help anybody if all you do is everything else. The second one would be just go open the books. Like if all you took from this was that I can go open QuickBooks and it's not that scary, go open the books and start a conversation with your bookkeeper. The third one would be if you do not have a bookkeeper, go get one. Because if you're paying your tax CPA to do your books at the end of the year, you're paying too much. And if you're trying to learn it yourself, I don't even get in my books. QuickBooks is meant for bookkeeping and bookkeepers, and let them do what they do best.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that because you also gave us a nugget earlier, a tip that there are different priced CPAs.
Yeah.
So just go out there and find somebody within your budget. But as you sometimes in the business, like you said, you got to spend money to make money. And sometimes you have to spend money. You might not want to do it, but this is a way to help you make sure your business is financially set up correctly and running properly and financially healthy.
Yeah, and if you were still in that startup phase and you're sitting here thinking, well, I have more time than I have money, because that's the trade-off when you're starting out. That time could be spent going and finding clients, figuring out your avatar, doing marketing, doing sales. All of that is worth so much more than figuring out how to do bookkeeping.
Yeah, because figuring out bookkeeping does not even appeal to me. So
I'm an accountant and it does not appeal to me.
As there are people who are like you said,
and they love it,
who love doing bookkeeping, and let them do bookkeeping. They're a superstar. But yep, superstar. All right. Well, Danielle, this has been so great. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with our community today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyra. This conversation was an absolute blast.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.